All right, everyone is back. Let's get going. This is the first puzzle. Black to move and draw. So, Omar, did you mean E instead of D? Yeah, that's right. Something similar happened in the game. But if we get the knight to E5, yeah, Matt, that's correct. If we get the knight to E5, then we have that typical fortress with queen versus bishop and knight. So in the game, so black has some scope here because there's still 3 pawns and h4 has been stopped. So black eventually made a draw in the game with king g6 and moved back and forth, but black can just go for that fortress right away. So that's probably the easiest one. h4, we can always take that. So these pawns are not really threatening us. So that's just a positional draw in a position like this. So that's our draw with black. Okay. All right. From a real game. Yeah. Next one, number 2. White to move and win. So here we have to do with a lot of these fortresses connected with an h pawn, a rook's pawn. Yeah. Matthew, that is the right idea to start off the study. So let's just, yeah, we get an inch closer each time all the way up. So we still need some precision, but the starting idea is this, and then bishop b6, then the black bishop cannot get out. So black had to, and now king h2, and now we will get closer and closer. King there, black has to play bishop e3, and then king g3. Now we will get to f3 now on the next move. Bishop d4, king f4, king e5. Okay, king b4, king d5. What would you do here if black plays bishop g1, which is the best defense? Yeah. So it's amazing how many tricks there are in these studies, but trust me, there are also a lot of tricks in when you play endgames. So it's not too far off. It's just that the studies are made at home by a composer. It's king c6. So all these tricks are also normal in normal endgames, not just in studies. King c6. Yeah, we need to get closer. If we take the bishop, then the black king will get close to the corner. So this is a draw. So white could, let me see. No, now we cannot protect our, so you cannot both protect your a4 pawn and then prevent the black king from going down in the corner. So this is going to be a draw. So will we play king c6 first after bishop g1 and king c6? And something like this, and then we're winning. Okay. So let's move on. This one, white to move and draw. Yeah, so bishop g1, knight f3. Yeah, so it's important how we, so Matt and Matthew, you are correct. We have to play bishop h2 here. There is, it looks like it might lead to the same, these two moves. Yeah, so Matt, you remember that. That's great. Here is the correct move. If king e2, which seems to lead to the same. So we want to force that pawn forward to h2. But here black has knight e2, which is winning. Yep. So creating this wall that white cannot get to the pawn now. So it gets to stay on h3. Now black is just winning. So we have to sacrifice the bishop here. And now the bishop is on this long diagonal, so black has to take it. Otherwise, the black king would have to be here, and then this black knight would have to block on this square. But obviously, that's not going to happen. So if black doesn't take the bishop, we just go out here somewhere. So black has to take the bishop. And now king e2. And black is one tempo short of stopping this idea. If black could play king g4 here, he would be winning. So black has to do this now. And then we forced black to play the pawn forward, and we have our well-known fortress. Okay, so that's how we draw it. All right, let's move on. What about this one? Black to move and win. And these are the promotion squares of the black pawn. Yeah. So see, bishop b6 to start with is not a good move because now white is not playing king h2. White is going for that a pawn directly because this is a draw. If white could just sacrifice the knight on this pawn, we have a draw. So it turns out that yeah, if we move the bishop, then we allow knight b8 and then knight c6, and then the knight will take this a pawn. Then we have the fortress because that dark squared bishop has the opposite color of the h1 square. So we have to give up the bishop. There's no other way. And then king c5. And now white would be able to make a draw. This is a knight versus pawn. So, but a rook's pawn has to be stopped on this square because then we can form a ring. But in our case, in the game here, we are going to have to stop the pawn on a1, which is no good. The knight will be trapped in the corner. So like this, white has to try to get around. But now it's no good to stop the pawn on the corner square. So the only chance white would have here is to trap the black king in the corner, but that's obviously not going to happen. So, but that happens sometimes. Then the knight can be sacrificed in the corner, like that. But obviously not here. So black is winning. Okay, so we had to sacrifice the bishop to avoid that fortress with bishop and rook's pawn. Okay, so let's move on. I had similar positions in the presentation, but we didn't have time for that. But you get the point of this one, and how to win this position with black. Not so easy. Yep. King g3. Rook g2 check. So what's the winning idea here? I see king moves and then rook moves out, let's say. Did anyone find the solution to this one? So the idea is to take away all the squares of the white rook on the second rank. And that's possible with two powerful bishops. So with the bishop pointing like this, black constantly threatens h2 check. So we can actually free the king and use the king as well. So we are going to move the king sideways to the queen side. And white is running out of square with the rook. So rook f2, there is bishop e3. So rook b2. Then we have king c3, rook e2, and then king b3. And now the white rook is not able to stay on the second rank. If king f1, then we have bishop d3. No, bishop c4, sorry. So this is actually, king b3, this is actually a Zugzwang position. So king and two bishops is actually, and the pawn too. Black is able to control the entire second rank. So that's how we win. There's no other way, by the way, because there are these rook take light square bishops tricks that leads to the fortress. So this is the only way. So this is winning. So black is winning like this. Okay, let's take the next one. All right, so here's another puzzle. I don't know if you saw it all the way to the end. This is actually the beginning of the study. So here's another case of white is an exchange up, but under normal circumstances, this is just a draw. So, but these circumstances are not normal because black's pieces are slightly clumsy. So white to move and win. Yeah, that's a very good point. So let's start off with the puzzle. Bishop f6, king a7, rook g7. That's okay. Rook f7. And now that is correct. If black now plays knight c6, this is one line I got here in the chat, which is great. Then white can take. And now we trap the knight because the king is on the sixth rank. And we win the knight. So the knight is trapped there. So black cannot play knight c6. So the only other move that really makes sense is to play king g6. And then what? Yeah, that's a good point because king g6 is coming. Then rook f8. And now black is in a kind of Zugzwang. If the king moves, the king has to keep attacking that bishop, because otherwise the rook will take that bishop. If the bishop moves, we can take the knight. But black has a clever defense here. Knight c6. So what to do now? Yeah, bishop takes bishop, and then black is trying to follow that rook. So it's quite a clever idea. Let's see, if rook goes there, we go there. The rook goes there, we go back. Yeah, that's the solution. Here we go, bishop f6 check. And we win the knight and the game. So also very nice trickery. So there's something fascinating about endgame studies without pawns. Yeah, so this is one of them. Great. Let's take the next. Let's see. So this is a kind of position where knight is chasing a pawn from behind. Did you see some good ideas in this one? This looks extremely hard to stop that black e3 pawn there. Yeah, so knight e7 is a great idea. And if king takes, then we have knight c6, threatening knight d4. And then if, let's say, if e2, there's knight d4 is even more effective than knight e5 because knight d4 is attacking the pawn. So often when we have these endgames, knight versus pawn, we try to attack the pawn from behind because then we force black's hand. So knight e5 is not forcing black to move the pawn. So what knight d4 is, but it's the same idea. There's a fork on f3. So there's a little bit of endgame theory involved here. That okay, so this forks the pawn and it's a drop. So and there's a few lines here with king f4, and then you get into, let's say, a position like this, and position like this is a draw because you can sacrifice the knight on g2. So there's a little bit of endgame theory here involved. So that's not the main idea of the study. If black takes that pawn on g5, then white will stop the e3 pawn. So black is trying to be clever here. So let's see. He ends up playing king h7. So let's see. How do we stop the pawn now with if king f7? The knight is a tricky piece. Yeah, I could take the last comment. Some of you did. Knight c6, and knight e5, and a fork on. So, but now we have a check on e5, so it still works. And then we get back. This is fine. If king h5, we have knight f5, because we have a check on g3. So black ends up playing king h7, where now the black king is out of reach. And now it seems like white is not able to catch that e3 pawn. So any good ideas here? I can give you a clue on this one. You're not able to stop that pawn now. So let's try to find another solution after black promotes to a queen. It's one of those positional draws, even though the opponent is a queen up. So white plays g6 check here. And if king goes to h6, then we have a check that wins the pawn. So black has to go to the corner. And what do we do now? Now we just need to defend that knight. So king b4, king to d6. So the king cannot get out of the corner. It's not really possible to put white in Zugzwang. So this is simply a positional draw. The knight is defending the pawn and keeping the king trapped. So this is a draw, positional draw. Okay, a very nice idea. Let's go for the next puzzle. So this one, in the presentation, I wanted to show you some, if you wondered what kind of fortress this was about, then we have a rook's pawn again. And I had some positions with these two pawns and the wrong color compared to the corner. And we also saw that in class 1 of this online program. So bishop knight and king mate, where there was opposite colored bishops. So we have seen the idea a little bit. So this is a study by Trotsky. So again, it's something to do with the rook's pawn and the wrong bishop compared to the corner. Yeah, I can do that. It's easier for me to just write an email when I follow up on the class here. So the question was if I could recommend a few books on endgame studies for club players. I will definitely think about that. I might even have a few ebooks I can send out. So, okay. So this is very typical Trotsky, and we already had one of his studies at some point. I believe it was last week. So he likes to do the special. So what's the problem here? So white can take the bishop and take a queen, but black is about to promote with a queen. Did anyone start off with the study? Yeah, that is correct. So Matt, you got it? So the idea is to take here, yeah. And now we can promote and take the queen. The problem is that this is the intention. This leads to a stalemate. So it's a nice defense. So I actually did, this is Trotsky's question mark. I actually did some analysis on this endgame. And it is possible to keep playing this position with white. And because of the mating threats, the threat to the e2 pawn, and the fact that queens are still on the board, it is actually possible to win from this position, although not easy. So there's a little flaw in that study. But so white can actually take the queen and win. But the intended solution is taking another dark squared bishop. And the point by Trotsky is again that, yeah, with one bishop, we would have, let's say, a draw here because the king can run to the corner. let's say. So let's say for a moment that this pawn doesn't really matter. So the fortress we are referring to here is is if there's only one bishop here. So now white has to be careful that black doesn't promote and then slip to the corner. That would be a draw. So that's why we double up on that diagonal. And then we can do like this. So with only one bishop, let's say in this position, if white has only one bishop, then this is a tricky endgame position, but it's a draw because white can use king and bishop. Actually, a king and a bishop, king and a minor piece, can actually chase the black king quite a lot around the board, more than you might think. So so we can get the black king quite far away from the pawn. But then when the white king tries to go back to take that pawn, black will still be in time to get back into the corner. So so that's the endgame. But with an extra bishop on the board, it's two bishops controls two diagonals. So it's not so much about two dark squared bishops. It's more like we have an extra bishop to control an extra diagonal. So let's see how that works. So here's the first example of that. Black to move. And now suddenly we have two bishop on the two diagonals, and black is forced back because of that. So here it's actually quite easy to force the black king back because we have an extra bishop. And now after this, we go for the pawn. And here, yeah, black is not in time to get back to the corner. And that was because of that extra bishop. So, so one bishop, we have a fortress. Two bishops, we break the fortress. So Trotsky has toyed with that idea before. So, okay. So that's all I wanted to show. These extra positions we didn't do in the presentation. I will still put them in the raw database that I will send out. And let me think about a few books. I will put that in the follow-up email too. So that was all for today. Yeah, you're welcome, and see you next time.